In a country that promises liberty and justice for all, the truth can still come second to the color of your skin. When the system decides guilt before trial, and those in power rewrite the story, who's left to fight back? This is the true-to-life story of a man framed for a crime he didn't commit. Of a federal agent who risked her badge to expose the truth. And of the conspiracy that reached all the way to the top. New York City, July 2023. The heat that night pressed down on the city like a punishment. Sirens screamed in the distance, blurred lights blinked through smog, and the sidewalks pulsed with restless life. In the Bronx, Marcus Hill was locking up his small community bookstore, Word and Soul, a quiet space he built with his mother before she passed. He didn't know that within the hour, he'd be in handcuffs. Marcus was a 32-year-old former high school teacher turned activist, known in the neighborhood for organizing youth literacy programs and food drives. Tall, lean, with calm eyes and a baritone voice that could steady any room, he had become a respected voice in local media. But being a voice in the black community always came with a cost. And tonight, that cost would nearly destroy him. As Marcus shut the gate and started walking home, his phone buzzed. A message from a number he didn't recognize. "We need to talk. Urgent. Meet me at 112th and Madison. Come alone." He stared at it, puzzled. He almost dismissed it as spam until a second message came. "It's about what happened to Isaiah. I have proof." Isaiah Carter had been Marcus's student. A bright, artistic teen who was shot during a traffic stop 6 months ago. The police claimed he resisted arrest. But Marcus never bought that story. And now, someone claimed to have proof. He hesitated, heart pounding, then turned and made his way to the address. It was an abandoned parking lot near the old tram depot. The streetlights flickered weakly, casting long shadows across cracked pavement. He waited. Nothing. Then he heard footsteps. From behind. "Marcus Hill," a voice called out. He turned. A white man in his early 40s stepped out of the dark, wearing a leather jacket despite the heat. His expression was unreadable. "I don't know you," Marcus said cautiously. "I know. But I know what you're trying to do. You're looking into Carter's case. I work with, let's say, people who don't want the truth out. And that makes you a problem." "What are you talking about?" Marcus asked, already stepping back. That's when he saw the gun in the man's hand. Bang! The sound rang through the lot, followed by silence. Marcus hit the ground. But he wasn't shot. The bullet struck a car nearby. And then, the flashing lights. 2 NYPD cruisers rolled in, sirens blaring. Officers jumped out, weapons drawn. "Hands on your head," they shouted. Marcus froze. "Wait, no. That man, he's got a gun." But the man was gone. Vanished into the night. Instead, Marcus was tackled to the ground, cuffed, and slammed against a cruiser. A young officer leaned close to his ear and muttered, "Should have stayed in your bookstore." At the 12th precinct, things got worse. The officer in charge, Detective Roland Keene, was a seasoned veteran with a sharp jaw and sharper attitude. He sauntered into the interrogation room, holding a folder. "Well, Mr. Hill. Quite the night you've had." "I didn't do anything. I got a message to meet someone. He had a gun. He fired first." "Save it." Keene dropped a photo on the table. It was a blurry image from a traffic camera, showing Marcus near a white van. The van had been reported stolen. Keene grinned. "You were found at the scene of an attempted robbery. The same van was involved in a federal weapons case last year. You're looking at obstruction, illegal possession, conspiracy, and maybe worse." Marcus stared at the photo. "This is a setup. That van was already there when I arrived." "Sure it was," Keene said. Then the door opened. A new man entered. Trim suit. Clean-shaven. Cold eyes. He flashed a badge. Agent Cole Reinhardt. FBI. Marcus's stomach turned. Reinhardt nodded at Keene, then turned to Marcus. Mr. Hill. You've been stirring things up. Civil protests, police reform demands, speaking on camera. Some people think you're dangerous. And tonight, you crossed the line. I didn't cross anything. I'm being framed. Reinhardt smiled thinly. That's what they all say. Marcus was booked and placed in a holding cell. The news broke within hours, activist Marcus Hill arrested in connection with armed conspiracy. His face splashed across social media. His past dissected. Some called him a fraud. Others defended him. But the system had made its move. What Marcus didn't know, yet, was that Agent Reinhardt had a personal stake in this. Years earlier, Reinhardt's younger brother, a rookie cop, was shot during a raid in Harlem. The shooter was never found. But Reinhardt blamed the culture of protest, especially voices like Marcus. Quietly, he had begun building a list. People to watch. People to silence. Now, he had planted the van. Fabricated GPS data. Altered video footage. And ensured Marcus was the only one caught. But Reinhardt made one mistake. A junior FBI tech analyst named Lena Torres had seen a log entry she wasn't supposed to. She noticed the GPS data for the white van had been accessed and modified remotely, before the crime even happened. She flagged it. Then hesitated. Who would believe her? Reinhardt was powerful, and she was just an intern. But something about Marcus's face stuck with her. Calm. Intelligent. Innocent. She downloaded the file to a flash drive. Then, with shaking hands, she slipped it into her bag and walked out of the office. Meanwhile, in the cell, Marcus closed his eyes. They wanted to break him. But he'd been here before. He'd seen injustice. Lived it. He was going to fight. Not just for himself. But for every name they'd tried to bury. Every life they'd tried to erase. The truth was out there. And somehow, he'd find a way to bring it to light. Even if the enemy was the very agency that claimed to serve justice. The morning after Marcus's arrest, headlines painted him as a radical. Community leader or criminal mastermind. FBI links local activist to federal weapons case. Social media exploded. Those who supported Marcus flooded timelines with hashtags like #FreeMarcusHill and #JusticeForIsaiah. But the noise did little to slow the gears of a machine built to crush dissent. In a sterile federal building in downtown Manhattan, Agent Cole Reinhardt leaned back in his chair, sipping black coffee. His office was spotless, not a paper out of place. On the wall hung an American flag and a framed photo of his late brother in uniform. To him, justice wasn't blind, it had a face. And Marcus Hill symbolized everything he blamed for his brother's death. He opened a secure laptop and checked the chain of custody for the surveillance footage. The digital trail looked clean, edited files buried beneath layers of false metadata. But he wasn't just cleaning up, he was erasing. What he didn't know was that someone had already seen the truth. Lena Torres sat at a coffee shop in Brooklyn, staring at the flash drive in her hand. Her laptop was open, a progress bar crawling across the screen as she decrypted the files she had pulled from the FBI's server. Her heart thumped in her chest like it wanted to leap out. She had joined the bureau to make a difference. But in just 4 months, she'd already seen how easily truth could be manipulated, how evidence could be twisted to fit a narrative. Still, this was different. Someone had used a federal system to frame a man. And no one in the office even blinked. As the file opened, she saw what she feared. Original GPS logs showing the van Reinhardt claimed was used by Marcus had been parked in that location 12 hours before the time of the arrest. Then she saw the file overwrite logs. Reinhardt's login. Manual edits. She closed the laptop, hands shaking. She had proof. But where could she go? At Rikers Island, Marcus sat in the visitor room, hands shackled to the table. Across from him was David Klein, a defense attorney known for taking impossible cases. Marcus's cousin had reached out to him overnight. "I've seen your file," Klein began. "They're building a hell of a case. Fabricated evidence, federal conspiracy charges. You sure you didn't do anything they could twist?" "I walked into a trap," Marcus said quietly. "Someone lured me there. A white guy with a gun. He fired. Then disappeared. Next thing I know, I'm on the ground with NYPD on my back." Klein rubbed his chin. "You're not just dealing with local cops here. The FBI's involved. This Reinhardt guy. He doesn't make mistakes unless he wants to." Marcus looked him dead in the eyes. "Then we prove he wants to." Klein smirked. "You're lucky I enjoy a challenge." 3 days later, Klein filed a motion to suppress key evidence, including the van surveillance. But Judge Harrington, a conservative appointee with a strict law and order record, denied the request. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Klein and Marcus's friends. That night, Marcus's former student, Jasmine Carter, Isaiah's sister, posted a viral video. "My brother Isaiah was killed by cops. They said it was resisting arrest. And now Marcus, the only person who helped us seek answers, is in jail. They're afraid of truth. They're afraid of people like Marcus. We won't be silent." The video reached over 3 million views. Meanwhile, Lena had a decision to make. She couldn't leak the data, not without putting herself in prison. But she needed someone who could use it legally. Someone who could get it into court. She searched online, cross-referencing lawyers, activists, and journalists until she found a name that stood out. David Klein. She created a burner email and sent the metadata, along with a message. "Marcus Hill is being framed. The GPS data was altered. Agent Cole Reinhardt did it. Here's proof. You didn't get this from me." She hesitated, and hit send. The next morning, Klein received the email on his office laptop. He stared at the files in stunned silence. His assistant, Camila, peeked in. "You okay?" He nodded slowly. "We've got our first break." He dug through the metadata, called in a forensic IT expert, and confirmed everything. The timestamps had been manipulated. The van had been planted. This was enough to request a new evidentiary hearing. But it was also dangerous. If the judge saw this as illegally obtained, or worse, if they traced it back to an internal leak, the case could collapse, and Marcus could face even harsher charges. Klein looked at Camila. "I need you to set up a meeting. Media. The good ones. We're going public." That night, Klein appeared live on MSNBC with legal analyst Dana Briggs. "We have reason to believe that my client, Marcus Hill, is the target of a coordinated framing effort by a federal official. We possess digital evidence, time-stamped, verifiable, that shows the vehicle in question was manipulated and planted at the crime scene. This is bigger than one man's freedom. It's about whether the system can crush a man just for speaking out." The clip made headlines instantly. Reinhardt saw it from his office, face hard as steel. He turned and dialed a number. "Activate containment protocol. Find out where the leak came from. I want names." Lena watched the news from her apartment, jaw clenched. The story was out now. But the spotlight meant danger, for Marcus, for Klein, and now for her. She packed a bag, grabbed the original flash drive, and made her way to a nearby motel. Burner phone in hand, she dialed a number. A voice answered. "Hello. It's about Marcus Hill," she said. I'm the one who sent the files. We need to meet. Who is this? Just someone who still believes in justice. Back at Rikers, Marcus got the news. He was being moved, federal custody. The DOJ had taken over the case. But Klein whispered before he was transferred. We have the files. We're going to trial. And we're going to bring Reinhardt down. Marcus nodded. Then let's give them a fight they'll never forget. In a quiet motel off the Long Island Expressway, Lena Torres paced the floor of a dimly lit room, every creak of the floorboard sharpening her paranoia. She had been awake for nearly 2 days, her phone on airplane mode, laptop shut down, flash drive clutched like a lifeline. Outside, traffic roared, but the real noise was in her head, fear, doubt, and the sound of her conscience refusing to stay silent. The knock on the door was soft. 3 short raps. Then silence. She looked through the peephole. It was Camila Rivera, David Klein's assistant. Young, Latina, sharp, someone Lena felt she could trust, at least for now. Lena opened the door. You alone? She asked. Camila nodded. David sent me. He didn't want to risk your name being traced. He says you're the key to everything. Lena sighed. Then let's hope that key doesn't get us both killed. In a secure FBI operations center downtown, Agent Reinhardt was spiraling. He had launched an internal leak hunt the day the story broke. His team had reviewed access logs, keycard entries, and security footage. Now he sat across from 2 tech supervisors. Tell me exactly what you found, Reinhardt ordered. The lead tech, Jenkins, swallowed. We traced unauthorized access to the GPS files. The IP was masked, but we triangulated Wi-Fi access to a work terminal, Station 17B. Whose terminal? Lena Torres. Reinhardt's jaw flexed. Where is she? She hasn't shown up in 3 days. No notice. No response to emails. Her badge hasn't been used. Reinhardt stood. Issue a bureau-wide alert. If she tries to go to the press, she burns us all. He turned to his deputy. And get Klein off my back. Permanently. Back at the federal holding facility, Marcus Hill was being transferred to the courtroom for a pre-trial hearing. His hands were shackled, and 2 marshals flanked him, but his posture was calm, composed, even regal. Reporters called out as he passed. Marcus. Do you still deny the charges? Is it true the FBI fabricated the van evidence? He ignored them. His mind was focused. Inside the courtroom, Judge Harrington presided again, but this time the energy was different. Klein stepped forward with a motion to compel federal review of GPS data, citing newly discovered digital manipulation. The courtroom stirred. Opposing counsel, a federal prosecutor named Andrea Vale, snapped, Your Honor, this motion is based on illegally obtained files with no known source. This is a media circus, not a court of law. But Klein didn't flinch. The metadata alone shows inconsistencies. We can subpoena the server logs directly from the Bureau. If there's nothing to hide, why fight transparency? The judge hesitated, then finally said, I'll allow limited discovery. If manipulation is proven, we revisit the entire foundation of this case. Marcus closed his eyes. A small victory. But a vital one. That night, in the motel, Lena gave Camila a second copy of the flash drive. If anything happens to me, Lena said, get this to the press. Not just the lawyers. The world needs to see it. Camila looked at her. What are you going to do now? I'm going to speak to Marcus. In person. You think they'll let you in? Lena pulled a badge out of her bag. They don't know I'm off the grid. Not yet. The next morning, Lena walked through the lobby of the Federal Detention Center, heart hammering. She presented her badge and requested an interview with Marcus under the pretense of a security inquiry. The guard waved her through. In the interview room, Marcus was waiting. He blinked in confusion when he saw her. "You're FBI," he said cautiously. "I was," Lena replied. "Now I'm something else." She sat down and placed the flash drive on the table. "I know you're being framed. And I know who's behind it. Agent Cole Reinhardt. I worked in his office. He's been falsifying evidence." Marcus looked at her, wary but curious. "Why tell me?" "Because I joined the Bureau to find truth, not bury it. You don't deserve what's happening. And, your student, Isaiah Carter. He shouldn't have died either." Marcus leaned forward. "You knew him?" "No. But I knew the officer who filed the report. Same squad that Reinhardt's brother worked with. They all cover for each other. It's a closed circle." Marcus looked at her, something shifting in his expression. "You risked your life coming here," he said. She nodded. "I'm not here for thanks. I'm here to finish what I started." Meanwhile, across town, Agent Reinhardt's car pulled into a shadowed alley, where a black sedan waited. Inside sat a private contractor, ex-military, now off-the-books asset. "You want Klein silenced?" the man asked. "No. Just scared," Reinhardt said. "Break into his office. Leave a message. Make it clear, if this case goes forward, people get hurt." The man nodded and drove off. But across the street, hidden behind tinted windows, another car sat watching. Camila Rivera had been tailing Reinhardt for 2 hours, under Klein's orders. She grabbed her phone. "We've got a problem." That night, Marcus returned to his cell, mind spinning. He had Lena's testimony, the GPS logs, and a legal team with a foot in the door. But Reinhardt wouldn't go down easy. At 3:17 a.m., he woke to a sound. A whisper in the dark. His cell door creaked open. A guard stepped inside, someone Marcus didn't recognize. "No lights. No cameras," the guard said. "You've got 5 minutes. Someone wants to talk to you." Marcus stood, heart pounding. Down a hallway, he was led to a small maintenance room. Inside, Klein and Camila waited, nervous, breathless. Klein whispered, "They're moving against us. They sent someone to my office. We've got maybe 48 hours before this whole case goes sideways." Marcus nodded. "Then we move faster. I want you to testify publicly," Klein said. "In a televised deposition. We leak Lena's files, the surveillance footage, everything. We bring the whole system into the light. But once we do, there's no going back." Marcus looked down. Thought of Isaiah. Thought of every name etched into his memory, names like Brianna, Tamir, Sandra. He looked back at Klein. "Let's burn the lie down." The cold morning air felt like static, charged with the weight of something inevitable. News vans lined the streets outside the courthouse. Satellite dishes pointed skyward like metallic flowers blooming toward conflict. Word had leaked, Marcus Hill would speak today, live. Inside the building, the press room was packed. Reporters from every major network, CNN, MSNBC, even conservative outlets like OAN and Fox, were there, their cameras ready. This wasn't just about one man anymore. This was about the FBI, justice, race, power, and whether the system would protect its own, or finally crack under its own weight. In a secure room 1 floor below, Marcus Hill sat alone, hands folded, eyes closed. A quiet storm churned in his mind. Lena Torres stood nearby, dressed in civilian clothes, visibly tense. She had agreed to go public, on camera, under oath. Camila and Klein had arranged full legal protection for her under whistleblower statutes, but it was thin armor against the institution she had once called home. "You ready?" Marcus asked softly, without opening his eyes. "No," she said truthfully. "But I don't think that matters anymore." 30 minutes later, a local judge signed off on a temporary public hearing, citing extraordinary public interest. Klein, Camila, Lena, and Marcus entered the courthouse through a private tunnel, escorted by marshals. Security was tight, snipers on rooftops, metal detectors doubled. The broadcast began at exactly 10 a.m., live-streamed across YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and national networks. Judge Harrington, forced into the spotlight, sat tight-lipped at the bench. David Klein stood first. "Ladies and gentlemen, we present sworn testimony, digital forensic evidence, and direct witness statements indicating a conspiracy to frame my client, Marcus Hill, for a federal crime he did not commit. The perpetrator of this conspiracy? A senior agent in the FBI." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Then Klein gestured. "Miss Torres." Lena stood, every step toward the witness stand feeling like she was walking a tightrope across a canyon. She took her seat, placed her hand on the Bible, and swore her oath. Under Klein's questioning, she began to lay it all bare. "On May 9, I accessed the Bureau's digital archive and discovered irregularities in the GPS metadata related to the van allegedly tied to Marcus Hill. The files had been altered. The original GPS logs show that the van was planted at the scene long before Marcus ever arrived. The edits were done manually. By Agent Cole Reinhardt." She handed over a signed affidavit and digital forensic report. Multiple exhibits were loaded onto a screen, file logs, security footage, access timestamps, all irrefutable. Klein's voice dropped. "Why did you come forward, knowing the risks?" Lena glanced at Marcus, then back at the crowd. "Because I joined the FBI to find justice. And justice doesn't bend to protect men who abuse power. I couldn't stay silent and let an innocent man be destroyed just because he challenged the system." The courtroom was dead silent. Suddenly, the back doors burst open. A pair of federal agents strode in, badges raised. "Your Honor," one barked, "we're placing Agent Lena Torres under immediate arrest for unlawful access of classified systems." Judge Harrington raised an eyebrow. "You'll stand down. She is under my protection for the duration of this hearing." The agents hesitated. One of the marshals stepped forward, placing himself between them and Lena. "This is obstruction," the agent snapped. "No," Harrington replied coldly. "This is justice." The agents backed off. Cameras caught every second. Social media exploded. Hashtag Protect Lena and hashtag FBI framed Marcus trended within minutes. Upstairs, Agent Reinhardt sat in his office, staring at the screen. The live feed showed Marcus now taking the stand. Klein stood beside him. "Mr. Hill," he asked, "why do you believe you were targeted?" Marcus's voice was calm, but firm. "Because I spoke up. About police violence. About my student, Isaiah Carter. About the system." Reinhardt wasn't after a criminal, he was after a threat to his worldview. "I wasn't framed because I'm guilty. I was framed because I'm loud." The room erupted in murmurs. Journalists scribbled furiously. Reinhardt smashed his fist into his desk. "Cut the feed," he shouted into his phone. But it was too late. The internet had it. Mirror streams, cloud saves, viral clips, his control had shattered. Later that afternoon, the Department of Justice issued a statement. "We have opened an independent investigation into Agent Cole Reinhardt. All evidence provided by legal counsel will be reviewed. Agent Reinhardt has been placed on administrative leave pending inquiry." That same evening, Klein filed a motion for immediate dismissal of all charges against Marcus, attaching Lena's testimony and digital forensics. Judge Harrington took it under review. But the damage had been done. The mask had slipped. Back in his cell, Marcus sat on the edge of his bunk, staring at the floor. A small portable radio played in the corner, news of the hearing was being dissected by commentators. Camila's voice came over the intercom from the visitor room. "Marcus. It's happening. They're going to drop the case. He closed his eyes. For the first time in weeks, he smiled. But outside the prison, a black SUV waited at a distant corner. Inside sat a man with a military haircut and a scar running down his cheek. He was the contractor Reinhardt had hired, the one Klein told Camilla about. He stared at a photo. Marcus Hill. His orders had changed. This wasn't about fear anymore. Now it was about elimination. A slow rain blanketed the city as Marcus Hill stepped into the prison yard for his court-approved transfer. His wrists were shackled, but his posture was taller than ever. He had endured the storm, and now sunlight was breaking through. But someone else was watching. Across the street from the facility, a long-range scope adjusted. The shooter exhaled, adjusting the pressure on the trigger. In his earpiece, static crackled, followed by a voice. Subject leaving facility. No witnesses. Clean shot. The man didn't flinch. He wasn't a thug, he was ex-special forces, now operating in the gray shadows between private security and political manipulation. His orders had been relayed through multiple intermediaries, but he knew exactly who signed the paycheck. Cole Reinhardt. Inside a black SUV, Lena Torres sat with Camila, nervously watching the prison gates. You think they'll try something? Lena asked. Camila glanced at her phone, where a news alert flashed. Anonymous threats made against Marcus Hill ahead of dismissal hearing. She didn't answer. She just opened the glove box and revealed a sidearm, bureau issued. I think they already have. At exactly 8:45 a.m., Marcus stepped into the prison transport vehicle, flanked by two marshals. They nodded respectfully. The atmosphere had shifted, not everyone in the system was against him anymore. But in the next instant, time fractured. A gunshot cracked across the street. The windshield of the transport spiderwebbed. The driver slumped over the wheel. Chaos erupted. Down! Down! One of the marshals shouted. Another shot rang out, this one hit the rearview mirror, shattering glass across Marcus's lap. From behind the SUV, Camila and Lena ducked. He's got a sniper. Camila yelled. She pulled Lena behind the engine block and drew her weapon. Cover me. With a surprising burst of speed, Camila darted across the street under fire. She made it to the far corner, scaled the side stairwell of the old tenement building, and reached the rooftop in under 2 minutes. The shooter was still perched, scope aimed. She raised her gun. FBI. Drop it. But he turned toward her without hesitation. She fired first. 2 shots. The shooter collapsed, gun spinning to the rooftop gravel. Camila stood there, chest heaving. Down below, sirens screamed. By 10 a.m., Marcus had been moved to a secure federal building under full protection. The attempted assassination was all over the news. But what shocked the country even more was what followed. David Klein held a press conference. Calm. Controlled. And explosive. We have reason to believe that this was not the act of a lone extremist. The shooter has no known ties to activist groups, but does have a history in private contracting for defense agencies. Paid through offshore accounts. Connected to a shell company, run by a former FBI consultant. Reporters gasped. And then he said it. We are officially calling for the indictment of Agent Cole Reinhardt for obstruction of justice, attempted witness intimidation, and conspiracy to commit murder. That evening, Marcus met with Lena in a secure federal witness room. You almost died, she whispered, visibly shaken. I almost did, Marcus said. But then again, I almost stayed silent, too. He looked at her. You saved me. You didn't have to. Lena sat down beside him. Yes, I did. There was a pause. Marcus took a breath. I don't want this to be just about me. When I walk out of that courtroom, I don't want people to say, Marcus Hill was innocent. I want them to say, this system isn't invincible. She nodded slowly. Then let's make them see that. The next morning, Cole Reinhardt was arrested at his home in Connecticut. The media caught everything: the cuffs, the perp walk, the silent refusal to speak. In custody, he lawyered up. His attorney made statements about deepfakes and planted files, but it was too late. Lena's testimony, the sniper's financial records, and internal digital logs formed a mountain even the Bureau couldn't ignore. Behind closed doors, Reinhardt finally agreed to speak. Under the condition of a sealed affidavit. It wasn't just me, he said. There's a dozen more like me. Maybe more. Marcus Hill was just the latest. He wasn't supposed to survive the system. That sealed affidavit would never reach the public. But Camila had already hacked the internal FBI storage drive. The confession leaked the next day. In federal court, Marcus Hill stood once more, this time not as a defendant, but as a citizen demanding recognition. The judge reviewed the motion for dismissal and addressed the courtroom. Given the overwhelming evidence of fabrication, interference, and misconduct, all charges against Mr. Marcus Hill are hereby dismissed with prejudice. Mr. Hill is free to go. The room burst into applause. Reporters flooded the hallway. Chants echoed from protesters outside. Justice for Marcus. Justice for Isaiah. End the silence. Later that night, Marcus stood on the rooftop of a Brooklyn apartment building, looking over the skyline with Klein, Camila, and Lena by his side. I thought I'd feel free, he said softly. But now, I just feel responsible. That's what makes you dangerous to people like Reinhardt, Klein replied. You didn't just beat him. You exposed him. Lena added, you gave others permission to speak. Marcus nodded. Then maybe freedom isn't walking out. Maybe it's turning around, and going back in, to pull the next one out behind you. But far away, in a quiet government office, a new folder opened on a classified screen. A photo of Marcus Hill appeared at the top. Below it, the label read. High influence figure, public disruption potential. Monitor continuously. A new agent clicked, accept assignment. The system was wounded, but not dead. Not yet. 6 months later, the headlines had shifted. The FBI launched a sweeping internal audit. 5 agents were dismissed. 1 top official resigned, for personal reasons. Investigations were launched into 3 more field offices. And still, the public demanded more. Marcus Hill was no longer a defendant, he was a national figure. But he hadn't chased fame. He had chased truth. And truth, once found, demanded responsibility. In early spring, Marcus stood before a packed auditorium at Howard University, delivering a keynote speech on justice and resilience. Cameras streamed it live to millions. They tried to bury me, he said, steady and calm, but they didn't know I was a seed. The crowd roared. I wasn't framed because I was guilty. I was framed because I dared to stand between the powerful and the powerless, and I didn't move. I paid the price, yes. But I didn't pay it alone. He gestured toward the audience. Because every time one of us speaks, one more can breathe. Among those watching were Camila, Klein, and Lena. Their bond had become something more than legal. It was family forged in fire. Meanwhile, in a small cafe in D.C., Cole Reinhardt sat in silence. Stripped of rank, status, and pension, he awaited trial for conspiracy and obstruction. But he wasn't afraid. A man in a dark suit slid into the seat across from him. Your testimony, sealed or not, was a mistake, the man said quietly. Reinhardt smirked. I thought I was the system. You were, the man replied. Now you're the crack in it. He slid over a folded piece of paper. No name. No signature. Just an address. You're going to disappear, Mr. Reinhardt. Not because we forgive you. Because we can't afford your face on a headline anymore. Reinhardt hesitated, then nodded. Back in Brooklyn, Marcus worked late into the night in a small office with the words, Community Justice Initiative, painted on the glass. He and Lena had co-founded it with Camila and Klein. They were already handling 4 new cases, all involving young black men accused under suspicious circumstances. The phone rang. CJA, Marcus speaking. A woman's voice, shaking. My son's been arrested in Atlanta. They said he was carrying something. But he's never even been outside the county. Please help me. Marcus wrote down the name. We'll be there by morning, he said. When he hung up, Lena looked up. Another one? He nodded. They're not done. She smiled sadly. Neither are we. Outside, snow began to fall lightly. The city moved on, as cities always do. But something had changed. People were watching. People were speaking. And in the heart of it all, one man who had once been silenced now carried 1,000 voices with him. A documentary titled, Framed, The Marcus Hill Story, aired on Netflix. It won 3 Emmys and sparked national debate. School boards across the country began to include his trial in civics curriculums. Protesters quoted him. Young people wore shirts with his image. But Marcus remained grounded. He still lived in the same apartment. Still taught a free night class once a week. Still walked the same streets where Isaiah Carter had been arrested that day, the day that started it all. Late one night, Marcus stood alone outside a mural painted on a brick wall, a massive depiction of Isaiah's face, surrounded by a quote. If justice fails one of us, it fails all of us. Marcus touched the wall gently, then turned to leave. Across the street, in an unmarked van, a camera lens adjusted. The voice in the headset spoke. Target confirmed. Observation status continues. A second voice answered. He's dangerous. The first voice replied. He's hope. And then the van drove into the darkness.